Welcome to Graybeard Philosophy, bringing ancient wisdom and daily practice to the inner life and the wildernesses we journey, one practice at a time. I'm Brian Winsor, and today we're going to explore how repeated choices of an unexamined life carves paths, habit energy, strengthens and carries us into unintended wildernesses. Today's essay is called The Wildernesses We Choose, Knowingly or Unknowingly. Not all wilderness rolls in like a weather front. Most wildernesses have trailheads. The trek begins with a choice, sometimes a bold choice to summit a mountain or to trek more than 4 months and 2,653 miles from Mexico to Canada on the Pacific Crest Trail. These chosen treks often simmer for months or years inside a person's heart and soul, building the momentum needed to plan, prepare, practice, and finally set out. These chosen treks are often accompanied by significant challenges: hiker hunger, weight loss, plantar fasciitis, physical, mental fatigue. From first-hand experience, I can tell you they are also filled with beauty. There's something powerful in knowing the only way to experience that depth of beauty is to walk the path. And because these wilderness treks are consciously chosen, we can name the pain and drive on to the summit or to the terminus. Some of life's greater wilderness treks also have trailheads. These life treks begin with a choice, sometimes a bold choice to earn a college degree, to start a business, start a family, enter politics, buy a home, to overcome addiction, or to end an abusive relationship. These chosen life treks often simmer for years inside the heart and soul, building the momentum and the courage to plan, prepare, practice, and finally to set out. These treks are often accompanied by seemingly insurmountable challenges, and I can assert these life treks are also filled with beauty. Again, there's something powerful in knowing the only way to experience this depth of beauty is to walk the path to a family, to a degree, to a business, to sobriety, to a healthy relationship. But other wilderness treks are not consciously chosen, and yet they are still chosen. There's a trailhead, but it's either unseen or ignored. They're guides and maps, but they are either unknown or dismissed. There's a compass, North Star, but the compass is abandoned and the stars go unnoticed. The hiker walks the unexamined trail through unmarked and unmanaged country, sometimes in circles, coming back around to where they began, only faintly recognize that they've been here before. This time, they resolve to stay on managed paths, consult guides and maps, use their compass. And again, they make the same circular trek, bushwhacking through unmanaged terrain, making and breaking the same commitments until they warn their own path and conclude they are simply a victim of an unchanging and unfriendly wilderness. Hey, I've seen this circular trek in organizations. I've lived it myself. For a few years as an executive leader, I lived inside a loop that felt responsible, even noble. Every week began with good intentions, priorities, goals, the big rocks. But by Tuesday, the day had shifted. A teacher conflict, a staffing gap, a parent phone call that couldn't wait, a student crisis, a facilities issue, a district deadline, a budget concern. And because I cared and because the work mattered, I kept stepping off the trail to handle the immediate problem. By Friday afternoon, I'd sit in my office staring at a list that had only grown. The important work, coaching leaders, strengthening instruction, building culture, thinking long-term, have been pushed aside again. I'd promised myself again, next week will be different. Then Monday would arrive, and I'd do it again. It wasn't that I lacked discipline. It was that I was bushwhacking through other people's emergencies without noticing I'd created a path of my own. A pattern where urgency ruled, boundaries dissolved, and my inner life stayed on the run. The loop became familiar. I could navigate it in the dark. And that's how you know you're in a circular trek. You recognize the pattern, the terrain, you're exhausted, and yet you keep ending up in the same place. That's the wilderness we choose, not by one dramatic decision, but by 1,000 small concessions to urgency. After a while, you stop asking, where am I actually going? You just keep moving. These are the wildernesses we choose, knowingly or unknowingly. The wildernesses we choose knowingly, well, some paths are obvious. We know where they lead, even if we don't want to admit it. We choose them anyway. The habit we keep feeding, the compromise we keep excusing, the anger we keep rehearsing, the relationship we keep misusing, the lie we keep justifying, the appetites we refuse to govern. This kind of wilderness isn't mysterious, it's familiar. We step into it with eyes open, and sometimes we even call it freedom. It's like, you do you, moral relativism of, hey, it's my life, I'll live it how I want. But it's not freedom. It's walking an unmanaged path with permission. The wildernesses we choose unknowingly, these are more common wildernesses because they're quiet. It doesn't begin with rebellion. It begins with the unexamined life. It begins with postponing the hard conversation, avoiding the honest look inward, numbing with noise or addiction, living on reaction, treating your inner life like an afterthought. Then the choices repeat. And repeated choices generate habit energy, the momentum that carries you forward even when you aren't consciously choosing anymore. At that point, people start saying things like, I don't know how I got here. This isn't who I want to be. Why do I keep doing this? I can't seem to change. Often the answer is simple and sobering. You did choose, just not all at once, and not always knowingly. Habit energy carried you, step by step, into a wilderness you now experience as a place you can't find your way out of. Internal systems can keep us in wilderness. This is where the examined life becomes urgent and important. Because by the time we realize we're in the wilderness, we're often not dealing with one bad decision. We're dealing with an internal system, a set of defaults that run without permission, tone that hardens before you notice, facial expression that reveals irritation, withdrawal that feels safer than truth, control that masquerades as responsibility, people-pleasing to avoid conflict, avoidance that becomes being busy. These are not just behaviors. They're signs of governance, signals that something in the inner life is running the show. When that happens, trying harder usually doesn't work. You don't push through a wilderness you created through repetition. You reorient. You return to base camp. For me, base camp has often been as simple as a driveway. Leading a charter school is both rewarding and stressful. For years, I often arrived before sunrise and left well after sundown. Many nights I left my office only after a phone call meant to calm an upset parent. One more attempt to steady the waters before I went home. Early in my career, one of my mentors gave me simple counsel. When I pull into the driveway at night, I'm not to walk straight into the house, still carrying the school. He told me, stay in your truck for a minute, shift back to being a husband and a father. That was my nightly return to base camp. Sometimes my sweet wife would text, hey, when you coming in? And I'd realize I was still sitting there, mind racing, jaw tight, already planning tomorrow's problems. Most nights, it took only a few minutes. a breath, slowing down, a reorientation to what mattered most, my relationship with my wife and my children. Then I'd open the door, step inside with a different spirit. It wasn't dramatic, but it was a practice, and it saved me from carrying one wilderness straight into another. My companion guide often is Marcus Aurelius. He taught me a lot about an inner retreat. We often assume we need an external retreat to regain clarity. Mountains, seashores, cabins, silence, a church. Marcus Aurelius understood that impulse, and he challenged it. He wrote that people, quote, seek retreats for themselves in houses in the country, by the sea, and in the mountains, unquote. But he called that a mark of the common sort of man, because a truer retreat is available at any moment. He said, to retire into yourself. Then he names what that inner retreat actually offers. He says, for nowhere with more quiet or more freedom from trouble does a man retire than into his own soul. That is basecamp language. And Marcus doesn't leave it as an inspiring idea. He turns it into a discipline. He says, constantly then grant yourself this retreat and refreshment. Let your principles be brief and fundamental. Close quote. Why brief and fundamental? Because when pressure narrows options, you don't have time for a dissertation inside your head. You need a small set of true north principles you can call to mind quickly. Principles that, as Marcus says, are sufficient to cleanse the soul completely. That is the examined life in its simplest form. Return inward, reorient to the true north, and choose again. Marcus presses the point even further. He wrote, perceive at last that you have within you something better and more divine than the things which cause the various effects, and, as it were, pull you around by strings. Habit energy. What is there now in your mind? Is it fear, or suspicion, or desire, or anything of the kind? Close quote. Base camp is the inner retreat, quiet and freedom from trouble, where brief and fundamental principles restore the soul and make choice possible. You see, we need to examine the wilderness to reorient the map. When you realize you're in a wilderness your habit energy helped create, the temptation is shame. But shame rarely leads to clarity, it leads to hiding. The better move is honest examination. What choices have I been repeating? What has that repetition trained in me? What is my default under pressure? What principle have I been violating quietly, consistently? What guide or map have I stopped consulting? And here's the practical truth for me. When I fail or get too busy to consult my map, the week becomes frantic. I'm pulled by other people's issues and emergencies. I'm reactive instead of principled. It becomes much harder to remain centered on what matters most because I'm no longer choosing the trail. I'm just responding to the terrain. As Stephen Covey said, I'm caught in the thick of thin things. But even without Covey, I know exactly what it feels like. I stop navigating by true north and I start navigating by urgency. That's when habit energy takes over for me. And that's how a week becomes a wilderness I didn't intend to enter. This is how you reorient the map. Not by pretending you're not lost, not by blaming the guides, the maps, the compass, the terrain, or the weather, but by telling the truth, returning to base camp, and choosing again. Because the wilderness you choose is not meant to become your permanent address, it's meant to become your teacher. And if you learn something here, you don't have to waste the miles. Here's our internal practice for the week. The weekly base camp retreat. Before we examine the week, we enter the base camp. It's a short ritual to stop habit energy, a weekly return to reorient your map, examine true north, and recommit to the next stretch. Here's what you need: a notebook, something to read from a guide, 1 page or less, and remember that your guide needs to be founded and centered on true north principles and a quiet place. This should be once a week, same time, same day, if possible. Before you examine the week, we enter base camp, not as an idea, but as a practice. The first work is to stop the forward momentum of habit energy. If you don't stop it, you'll bring the wilderness into the retreat, and then you call it a reflection, when really it's just rehearsing and regurgitating. First step, stop. Sit down, phone out of reach as we spoke about, both feet on the ground, and rehearse the 10 breaths. This is Thich Nhat Hanh's first invitation to stop running and come home. 2, calm the mind. This will be for 2 minutes. It's called shamatha. Bring attention to the breath at the nostrils of the rise and fall of the belly. Don't force a special state. Just stay near the breath. Count 10 breaths softly in your mind. Third step is to rest. Now you release the counting and let the breath be natural. Let the mind settle like silt in a jar of water. If thoughts come, don't wrestle them. Just notice them like a passing cloud and return to the breath. Say quietly on the out-breath, release. The fourth step of shamatha is to heal. Place a hand on your chest or over your belly where you feel stressed the most. Offer yourself one honest sentence. This has been a hard week. I'm tired, but I am here now. Then one gentle commitment. For the next 30 minutes, I will not rush. For the next 30 minutes, I will tell the truth. For the next 30 minutes, I will return to base camp. Then you open the retreat. Write one line at the top of the page. I return to base camp to stop habit energy, calm my mind, rest, and heal. Then we begin step 1. This week we're going to review the wilderness. For 8 minutes, I would like you to review the wilderness without. What happened around you? And the wilderness within. What it revealed within you. Right? The hard miles this week were, and then free write. The pressure points were, and then free write. You may pause while you write. Next, the wilderness within. Answer quickly, no essays. Under pressure, my default showed up as, and just free write. Was it tone, impatience, withdrawal, control, avoidance, people-pleasing, performance? What I did well, steady and clean, was, and then free write. Where I drifted was, what I tolerated that trained me the wrong way was, and then free write. Now, look through your writings and circle one recurring pattern. That's your trail report. Step 2. This should only last 8 minutes. Right at the top of the page, my map right now. Then answer, do I know where I'm trying to go? Write one sentence. The direction I want my life to move is. Two, What direction did my habit energy pull me this week? Here's your sentence. My habit energy pulled me toward, and free write. Was it reactivity, numbing, control, resentment, avoidance, distraction, courage, truth? Just name it. Step 3. Is my map aligned with true north principles? List 2 or 3 true north principles you want to be governed by. There are many principles. Telling the truth, being steady. Don't trade integrity for relief. Patience. Returning to the present moment. Then ask, where did I live aligned with these principles? And where did I violate them? Quietly, repeatedly. This is the examined life, not self-condemnation, reorientation. You be gentle with yourself and reorient your map to true north principles. Third, stewardship check. This should take you only 6 minutes. Choose 3 stewardships to review. Pick what fits your life. Is it your body and your health? Is it your relationships? Your work, your craft? Your attention, input screens, and your pace? Is it your money and resources? Your home, your land, inner silence, inner life? For each stewardship, write 3 short lines. Tended, neglected, repair. Tended. This week I cared for this stewardship by, and then write. Neglected. This week I drifted here by, and write. Repair. One small repair next week is, and free write. Now keep it small, keep it doable. Basecamp work is faithful work, not fast work. 4, consult a guide, 4 minutes. Read 1 short passage, a paragraph or a page from a guide. You know who my guides are. You choose yours. Right. The line that stayed with me is, the correction it offered me is, the practice it calls for next week is, pause and free write. Fifth, the last one, should only be 2 minutes. Choose 1 brief and fundamental principle for the coming week. Write, my principle, and just write it. When pressure narrows options, I will pause, breathe, delay my response, soften my tone, check my face, tell the truth plainly, step away for 60 seconds, ask 1 honest question, make a commitment for when pressure narrows options. Close with a single trail marker sentence. Next week, I will return to base camp when, and then you name your most common trigger. Now 30 seconds. 1 final line. Learn something for the next trek. That sentence becomes your compass note for the week. What did you learn? Now this is why the weekly retreat matters. It breaks the loop before habit energy carries you another mile in the wrong direction. But even the most examined life cannot prevent every wilderness. Some find us without our consent. In the next post, we'll shift to a different kind of wilderness, the wilderness that finds us without our consent. When suffering narrows options from the outside, what remains of freedom? Viktor Frankl will be our guide there. Hey, thank you again so much for listening to Graybeard Philosophy. If this essay helps you, stay with the practice. Remember, small and faithful is enough. You can find the written version of this podcast at graybeardphilosophy.com. Until next time, be kind to yourself. Learn something for the next trek.